here's what a competent country looks like. And by that, I don't mean the United States of America. I'm talking about China. The Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi on the Iran war.
Phoenix TV. The U.S. and Israel have again launched military strikes on Iran, and the conflict is spreading to the entire Middle East region. What is China's view on the Iran situation, and what solution does China propose?
This is an issue that everyone is concerned about. It is also the focal point in the current international situation. China's attitude is objective and impartial. We have stated our principled position on multiple occasions, which can be summarized into one key message, that is, to bring about ceasefire and end hostilities. Ancient Chinese wisdom warns that weapons are ominous tools and should not be used without discretion. Seeing the Middle East engulfed in flames, I want to say that this is a war that should not have happened. It is a war that does no one any good. The history of the Middle East tells the world time and again that force provides no solution. An armed conflict will only increase hatred and breed new crises.
China can say this all day, every day, but let's be real, okay? When push comes to shove, sometimes you got to take military action, okay? And I don't mean like on the American side. I mean like the Iranians are showing that reality. Because America is hell-bent on death and destruction around the globe. They're not going to fucking stop. Like, it is what it is. You have to provide a counterbalance. Bro, you look 2 years younger today? Really? Is it because I just changed my glasses?
Once again, China calls for an immediate stop to military operations to avoid the spiraling escalation of the situation and prevent the conflict from spilling over and spreading. China is of the view that to find the right and proper solution to the issues relating to Iran and the Middle East, the following fundamental principles must be observed. First, respecting state sovereignty. Sovereignty is the cornerstone of the current international order. We believe that the sovereignty, security, and territorial integrity of Iran and all countries in the Gulf region should be respected and must not be violated.
Why is China saying impartial actor, etc., when they're supposed to be Iran's ally? Because they're pussies.
Second, rejecting the abuse of force. Might does not make right. The law of the jungle must not return and rule the world. Willful use of force does not prove one's strength. Civilians...
You said law except Taiwan? The fuck do you mean? They don't do shit to Taiwan either. What are you talking about? They're always TRADEMAXing. That's it. They have said more than AOC liberal. That's so funny.
Innocent and should not be victimized. Third, non-interference in internal affairs. The people in the Middle East are the true master of the region. Middle Eastern affairs should be determined by regional countries independently. Plotting color revolution or seeking regime change will find no popular support. Fourth, promoting political settlement of hotspot issues. China always believes that peace is the most precious. All sides should return to the negotiating table as quickly as possible, resolve differences through equal dialogue, and make efforts for realizing common security. Fifth, major countries should play a constructive role and use their strength in goodwill.
Dude, this is the funniest chatter. Can you turn this AI? Can you turn off this AI slop narration? No. First of all, it's not even AI. It's a real human. Secondly, even if it was AI, I don't speak Chinese. The fuck? And neither does anybody else here. Like you hit the double. You hit the double where you, one, falsely claimed something was AI, and then two, got mad at like one of the only instances where like AI is kind of valid. You know what I mean?
Another ancient Chinese adage reads, "When benevolence and justice are not practiced, the position of strength shifts." Major countries should act in the spirit of justice and righteousness and contribute more positive energy to peace and development of the Middle East. As a sincere friend and strategic partner, China stands ready to work with Middle Eastern countries to implement the Global Security Initiative and restore order to the Middle East.
The reason why China is saying they're an impartial actor is because they also obviously fucking play a major trade role with Saudi Arabia and all the Gulf countries that are getting bombed right now. Even though it's the American bases that are getting bombed, they can't just be like, we love Iran. We're with you, Iran, all the way. Because they're trade maxers. That's why they're not, leaning into it aggressively. I'm sure they're probably still helping Iran, but they're not. Like they're obviously offering political cover to Iran, which is necessary, and it's totally valid. I will say that 100%. Iran, in this circumstance, is the harmed party. Israel and America are the party doing the wrong, doing the illegal act of waging war against the country for no reason, a decapitation strike on the leadership. All of that stuff is completely illegal, and it doesn't really matter that the rest of the world disagrees with it. Obviously, the rest of the world doesn't mean anything. When America wants to do something, they do it. And it turns out increasingly other regional powers also have that level of influence and also that level of like rule breaking as well. We saw that with Russia and Ukraine. And no one can really stop it. But China still plays this role of diplomacy and stability in the global stage because they think like they will be the true safeguard of the United Nations in the future. I think that's silly, but I'm sure they know better than I do.
Restore tranquility to the people and restore peace to the world. Thank you.
Bizdeki İran nefreti nereden geliyor? Abi, the Turkish person in the chat asked me, why do we hate Iran? Like in Turkey, they're Shia, they're a dominant power, they're a regional power. Turkey is a regional power, and that's the reason. It's literally as simple as that. There is a very real, dare I say, idiotic Sunni fear that exists in many countries. Countries that have like a significant Shia population especially, but countries that don't even have a significant Shia population, where there's this idea that, Iran wants to make the entire region Shia run with like Ayatollah, like under the guidance of the Ayatollah. This is the major difference in how Shia countries are run versus Sunni countries are run, and that is like a big point of contention between a lot of the Sunni majority and Sunni run countries. I think it's silly overall. I think it's ridiculous. Like at most you can have like a competition, I guess, for power in places like Iraq, but outside of that, like, and Bahrain, outside of that though, like I don't think the Shias are gonna run Saudi Arabia anytime soon. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous on both sides. But as far as like that's one of the reasons. The real reason is because these countries want to be great powers. Saudi Arabia is the economic engine of the Gulf. It's the most powerful nation in the Gulf. It's same with Turkey. Turkey is a major force in the region as well, and so is Israel. So is Iran. So these guys are constantly at odds with one another, even if they are all under the umbrella, with the exception of Iran, even if they're all under the umbrella of America and Western powers, they have their own regional ambitions, and that's why they're constantly at odds with one another.
News agency. The Laiqingte authorities have been claiming that Taiwan is a sovereign, independent country. And
Saudi Arabia has no defense and borders Israel. They're delusional. Zero leverage if Iran falls. No, they know that. They know that. That's why I don't believe the Wall Street Journal reporting that like Saudi Arabia was actively petitioning to destabilize Iran. I don't think they want to destabilize Iran. I think they like that Iran was defanged and the axis of resistance was destroyed, especially in countries where Saudi Arabia wants to also, maintain Sunni control or have some level of influence, right? However, Saudi Arabia did not. I don't believe that Saudi Arabia wanted this. I would go so far as to say that Saudi Arabia wanted the opposite of this. Not only because it would obviously provoke a response from Iran and Saudi Arabia would get bombed in the process, but also the reason why they didn't want it is because, they have no leverage against Israel. Did you listen to Saudi Prince's interview? He shit on Iran? No. That stuff doesn't matter. That's just posturing. No. Saudi Arabia wants a weak Iran. Saudi Arabia hates Iran. This is true. But Saudi Arabia doesn't want no Iran, or certainly not like a collapsed Iran, because Saudi Arabia also benefits from Iran's existence. As long as it exists, Israel can't go too far. Okay? Now, there's also another side of the story. And the other side of the story is the United Arab Emirates. So the United Arab Emirates, in an effort to gain more leverage in the Gulf, more influence in the region, totally backs Israel to the hilt, okay? UAE decided in the last decade that they're just going to be Israel. They're going to be Israel, but Arab. They're going to be Israel, but Muslim. They're Muslim Israel, if you can even call them that. And basically, the UAE decided we're just Israel. We're going to very openly defend Israel's interests. We're going to very openly engage in influence peddling, for Israel. And we're going to be the most spiritually Israeli. We're going to build the most spiritually Israeli city of all time, Dubai. Saudi Arabia doesn't like that either. Okay? Saudi Arabia also doesn't like that. That's why there's been a separation between there's been a split between the Saudis and the Emirates, the United Emirates. So that's another fear for Saudi Arabia as well. Like the UAE coming to the forefront and just like totally backing Israel all day, every day. Saudi Arabia obviously has the Abraham Accords. Like all these Gulf countries are still down to play ball with Israel, but they also want to keep Israel at arm's distance for domestic concern, issues that relate to domestic pressures, but also because they are still very much fearful that Israel can do to them what it did to Doha, or what it does to Lebanon, what it does all around the region. It's like being in the neighborhood with a fucking mutated pit bull that has no leash whatsoever any longer, and the pit bull has rabies. The UAE has decided that they will also become a pit bull themselves. Everyone else, on the other hand, is like, I don't want the fucking rabies, dude. They're going to bite me too. So they're trying to create regional pressure, or they're trying to maintain regional pressure.
That the Taiwan question is not China's internal affairs. The Taiwan question and the cross-strait situation have become more heated, and the PLA's drills are getting closer to the island. What do you make of the risk of conflict breaking out in the region? And does China have a timetable and roadmap for reunification?
Taiwan has been an integral part of China since ancient times. It never was, is not, and never will be a country. Its return to China is a victorious outcome of the Chinese people's war of resistance against Japanese aggression and the Second World War. Its status has been definitively fixed by a series of international legal instruments, including the Cairo Declaration, the Potsdam Proclamation, Japan's Instrument of Surrender, and the Resolution 2758 of the UN General Assembly.
It's so funny. Dude, I'm sorry, there's nothing funnier to me than like Iran and China and Russia and all of these other like quote unquote foreign adversaries constantly leaning into legalese. And I'm not saying that as like, oh, these guys don't actually operate within the confines at all. I'm not doing that like Western chauvinistic bullshit. They do actually try to maintain some semblance of rule-based order. Obviously, they violate it. I mean, specifically, Russia has violated it by invading Ukraine. But even within that violation, they try to like operate within the confines, even though there are obviously war crimes that take place like Bucha and shit. Like, but that's the reason why there's a difference between the way that like Russia has waged war in Ukraine or even like population transfers, things like that, right? Russia has done a lot of war crimes. Russia has violated a lot of like rules of war. But there's still a very significant difference between the way that Russia is waging war in Ukraine, still unjustifiable, still bloody, still unacceptable, versus what Israel has done in Gaza. And that's the point that I'm making, which is these guys literally still think that like international law matters at all. They are operating as though we are not in a totally new world that is basically the same as the old world, but they've also dropped any fucking like any interest or investment in abiding by the international rule-based order, right? Wow, nice seeing you see their hypocrisy. Wait, what do you mean? Who is their hypocrisy? If you're an American, you have no leg to stand on to call out any of these fucking countries. Let's be real. When has America abided by international rules? Like, what are you talking about? We wrote the rules and we violate those rules over and over again. It's ridiculous. I'm saying it's so fucking stupid that these guys will still be like, excuse me, you know, here are the many different reasons why, you know, according to international law and previous analysis, that, you know, Taiwan actually is a part of China. They don't care. They don't give a shit at all. Like, no one cares about the paperwork, man. Like, Americans don't care about the paperwork. The UN is a toothless institution. I'm sorry. There is no, you know, there is no real paperwork. Now, do I prefer this? I do. I prefer the, you know, even if it's just purely symbolic, I prefer that they're still trying to do this thing where they're like, well, you know, international law dictates that Taiwan is a part of China. Most of the major powers in the world understand that, you know, Taiwan is a part of China, including the United States of America, all this stuff. But like, I hope they're well aware that no one else on the other side gives a shit, right? Like, I'll say this sincerely. While there isn't any serious appetite in Taiwan as it stands for unification, right? They want status quo. They want status quo. That's what they want. Overwhelmingly, they are in favor of status quo. But let's say in a hypothetical scenario where Taiwan decided that they wanted to unify with China democratically, you think America would let Taiwan go? I'm asking sincerely, if every single Taiwanese was like, oh, we're Chinese, I want to be a part of China, I already work in fucking China, my family works in China, my family lives in mainland China, I want to be a part of China. You think the United States of America would allow that to fucking happen? Fuck no. Don't be fucking delusional, man. It's just not. That would never happen in a million fucking years, because America's goals in Taiwan is not the liberation of the Taiwanese people. This is the same delusional nonsense that people constantly fucking present to me. Okay? is delusional. It's completely fucking delusional. Taiwan is a military base 100 miles off the coastline of mainland China. That's all it's worth. And also they make chips. But even before the chips, Taiwan was a military base, a thorn in China's side. Okay? I don't know why there are still people who have this like idiotic notion that America cares about human rights anywhere. Like, what the fuck? How many countries do we have to fucking bomb for Americans to finally come to that conclusion that, like, no, we don't give a fuck about people in Taiwan. We don't give a fuck about the people in Iran. We don't care. We've never cared. Some of you are delusional enough to believe it. But with the new vulgar imperialism meta that Donald Trump has demonstrated, people are basically coming to that conclusion regardless. Yeah, I don't give a fuck who we kill. Who gives a shit, right? That's basically the way that a lot of Americans, like a lot of hogs, are approaching the subject matter. So you got to figure out real quick which side you're on. You know, are you on I'm going to delude myself into thinking that there's some sort of like liberation at the end of this, at the end of American interference in the affairs of other countries? Or are you actually going to wake up to that reality and say, I oppose American imperialism. I oppose Western imperialism. The problem with this take is that there's an implied notion of international law ever having existed or being normative. The truth is the norm has been Holocaust after Holocaust after Holocaust from the moment the U.S. attained hegemony in 1945. The UN has been since a genesis tool to wash the same imperialist violence of Britain after colonial power slipped. I don't disagree with you. That's why I said America sets the standard after World War II and has been utilizing the UN as a tool, utilizing international law as a tool to do their bidding. And whitewashing their obvious savagery while simultaneously really bringing up the casus belli to engage in interference overseas by pointing to international law when our adversaries are doing it, or nations in the periphery are doing it. Yes, that is the truth, and it's something that I acknowledge all the time. However, my assessment is I'd rather have an international governing body that doesn't just believe in the theory of conflict avoidance, but actually does have some power to stop conflict from taking place. That's the whole point of fucking multipolarity, right? That's what's supposed to happen. It hasn't happened. It didn't even happen in the Cold War, but at least it was like, I would say, less chaotic, and maybe it gave countries in the global South more room to breathe and have successful liberation movements, because there was another pole that armed them when they were doing anti-colonial, anti-imperialist actions. Many of these countries would be worse off if the USSR had not existed. Cuba is a great example of a country that would absolutely look like Haiti right now. Cuba would be worse off if the USSR didn't exist. Look no further than two different countries that have, different modes of development, but one is much more diverse than the other. But look at India and China. Okay, look at Indian development versus Chinese development. The major, albeit this is reductive analysis, but there's a major difference between Chinese development and Indian development. Look at where India is at now. Look at where China's at now. How do you think that happened? Why do you think that happened? It was Malcolm X who said something really interesting, where he was like, this is far before this development ever even took place, but Malcolm X was asked about Nehru versus Mao. Okay. Here, I'm going to read this to you. And I don't want anybody to get offended or get mad at me for this is Malcolm X's own opinion, not mine. Okay. But I think it helps you identify something here. Malcolm X, I think that Nehru probably was a good man, although I didn't go for it. I don't go for anybody who's passive. I don't go for anybody who advocates pacifism or peaceful suffering in any form whatsoever. I don't go for it. What about Jesus Christ? Malcolm X does not even respond to that question. Continues, I go for Mao Zedong because I go for Mao much more than Nehru because I think that Nehru brought his country up in a beggar's role. Their roles, the role of India and its reliance upon the West during the years since it got its supposed independence, has it today just as helpless and dependent as it was when it first got its independence. Whereas in China, the Chinese fought for their independence. They became militant right from the outstart. And today, even though they aren't loved, they are respected. Though the West doesn't love them, the West respects them. Now, the West doesn't respect India, but it loves India. I see your distinction. Can you see my distinction? I do indeed. Malcolm X says, I admire the stand of China and the stand of Mao Zedong, but I can't admire with respect the stand of Nehru in India. I just can't do it. Hold up, y'all are unironically communist? Applies here. Bro, that's the same one. Yeah, the U.S. won't give India the same kind of economic advantages it gave China, which allowed that country to emerge as a major competitor, Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau said. This is also bullshit. They make it seem like America made China. Like, that's also fucking Western chauvinism of a different order, but do you see... I mean, India is far more diverse, obviously. And there have been other setbacks. India's starting point is different. The caste structure, like there's a lot of cultural forces and reactionary forces at play. Low key, maybe in spite of the excesses, the Cultural Revolution might have actually played a major role in purging some of the rightist elements within China. Who knows, right? I can't make that assessment. I don't know. I can just look at the results, right? I can only look at the results. But it does feel to me like a communist India would probably fare better than what India looks like now. Now, the reason why I say that is because there is a communist India. It's called Kerala, right? And they are literally the best region in India. They are doing better than everybody else. That's gotta mean something, right? Like, because India, in spite of the fact that it's, it has like this Western liberal democracy that is that keeps voting for this fucking fascist Modi. India does have robust and very large communist movements. Not just in Kerala either. But my point is, especially for developing nations, like, highly recommend communism. Can't recommend it enough. That's all I'm going to say. Like, I can't recommend it for Americans because we just don't have that base. Like, we don't have material conditions that resemble places where successful communist movements have launched. Americans are too fat and too comfortable in the imperial core to ever entertain such things. But if you're India, I mean, it's right there, man. It's right there for the seizing.
Any attempt to create two Chinas or one China, one Taiwan is doomed to fail. The DPP authorities' obstinate pursuit of their separatist agenda is the root cause. And
a communist India wouldn't be worth the Great Famine and Cultural Revolution and not having democracy? Brother, what do you mean? We're talking about India. This is like, during the time frame where communism was being developed, India was already going through tremendous famine anyway. India also still experiences famine from time to time. What are we fucking talking about? What? What the fuck? That's crazy to say. India from the beginning has been very socialist. Leaders would compete on who was more socialist. We had a very radical land redistribution reform. No, I know. I'm saying that's why I was saying like it should have just been, it should have went all the way. There weren't famines before communism, buddy. Go to history class. India, China, and Russia never experienced famine historically before communism. That's funny. I know you're being sarcastic.
Undermining peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. It has been proven time.
The craziest part about it is that like famine under imperialism unironically was made worse by colonial powers, as opposed to like famine under communism you can still attribute to like state mismanagement, okay, where they fuck it up big time, and you know a lot of people die as a consequence of like this great collectivization initiative, and it's horrifying, but it's still different than like direct famine as a consequence of British rule, right, in Ireland, like that's or the Bengal famine, right? Like there are instances where like famine is directly brought about by a colonial entity that is just destroying the population because they want the fucking supply for themselves.
Again, that the more the international community stands against Taiwan independence and upholds the One China principle, the more assured peace and stability will be across the Taiwan Strait. The Taiwan question is China's internal affair. It is at the core of China's core interests, a red line that must not be crossed or trampled on. Taiwan was recovered by China over 80 years ago, and we will never allow any individual or force to separate it from China again. The One China principle has overwhelming support in the international community. More and more countries are standing with China, not only reaffirming their commitment to the One China principle and recognizing Taiwan as part of China, but also taking a clear stand against all activities for Taiwan independence and supporting the cause of China's reunification. This is irrefutable proof that opposing Taiwan independence and promoting China's reunification is the trend of the times and meets the expectation of the international community. Resolving the Taiwan question and realizing the complete reunification of our motherland is a historic process that cannot be stopped. Those who support it are on the right side of history, and those who defy it shall perish.
Thank you, NBC. Respected Minister Wang Yi, you have spoken of China-U.S. ties as most consequential relationship over time, with strategic choices that will shape world history. So, given all the happenings, would China accept the J2 format cited by some, including President Trump himself, as a framework for China and the U.S. to hold the...
What? But I take Haas, the argument you're making is colonialism is bad because of intentional famine versus communism, where it's unintentional famine. You're ignoring the fact that famines were due to historical failure to keep up with agricultural methods and the famines communist states went through were the last they ever had as they rapidly... This is my favorite fucking take of a chatter who literally just summarizes literally what I just said, but slaps bad take in front of it. You just straight up said what I just said. Yes, I said it's mismanagement. It's not being able to keep up with like agricultural technology, or agricultural technology is not advanced enough for collectivization. There's a reason why there's no more fucking famine in China. Yes. I don't even understand what why did you just repeat the same point?
Joint responsibility in addressing global challenges. If not, what alternative framework
What
would
are you eating?
propose?
Kasama. It's a Pinoy Gang Michelin star rated breakfast place. And it's treats that March got me, and it's so bomb. It's the best pastries I've ever had in my life. I swear to
To
God.
prevent confrontation with the United States and assure the world that China's rise is not aimed at overturning the existing international system. Thank you.
美国全国广播公司凌晨表示，中美关系是当今世界最重要的双边关系之一。中美两国的战略选择影响世界历史的演进方向。中方是否接受包括特朗普总统本人在内的人提出中美共治的框架，共担责任，应对全球性挑战？如果不接受，中方将提出何种替代方国？
There is no doubt that China and the US have a significant impact on the world, but we should not forget there are more than 190 countries on our planet. World history has always been written by many countries together, and the future of humanity will be forged through the collective efforts of all nations. Diversity is the inherent nature of human society. And multipolarity is what the international landscape should look like. Looking back in history, great power rivalry and bloc confrontation have invariably inflicted disaster and pain on humanity. Therefore, China will never take the beaten path of seeking hegemony as its strength grows, nor do we subscribe to the logic that the world can be run by major countries. China has inscribed in its constitution that it follows an independent foreign policy and is committed to pursuing a path of peaceful development. Chinese leaders have often declared to the world that no matter how the international situation evolves and how strong China becomes, it will never seek hegemony or expansion.
Boo.
As for how the international
I don't know. People don't believe that when they say this, but they just don't do it. They don't do it when they should. They don't do it when they could. I've said this over and over again. Like, even from their own self-preservation, there are so many instances where they could just engage in like militancy, engage in actions that offer them a much better position in the global stage. And they just don't do it. They just sit there and they expect fucking Western nations to come to that conclusion on their own that like China actually has no, imperialist ambitions. China doesn't want to destabilize the world. China wants stability. China wants trade maxing. And Westerners never will believe them.
international landscape should evolve. China's proposal is to build an equal and orderly multipolar
I mean, they're a massive trade partner to Israel still. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy.
world. Equal means every nation, regardless of size or strength, is an equal member of the international community and can find its place and play its role in a multipolar world. Orderly means all countries should uphold the widely recognized international rules, namely the purposes and principles of the UN Charter and the basic norms of international relations. Building an equal and orderly multipolar world should be the common responsibility of all countries. With more resources and capabilities, major countries should be more generous, shoulder more responsibilities, and set an example of observing rules, honoring commitments, and upholding international law. China will continue to play a constructive role in reforming global governance and work with all countries toward a multipolar world. Thank you.
Now, we've just got some breaking news.